Howdy, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Carla and Crappy Show. I am Crappy. I am very much in training mode because this is the second time we've recorded. No, it is the first time we've recorded our summer 2023 program, but perhaps the second time we've done the 2023 program. Hi, Carla.
Hi there. For the first time, I think in the 12-year history, the now 12-year history of the Carla and Crappy Show, we just did the show and forgot to hit the record button.
And by we,
you feel our pain. Fellow
by we, Carla means me. So
it just means that we had a practice run.
We had a practice. It's just like training camp. We had a practice run. We got through the whole thing, and AJ goes, "Hey, did you hit the record button?"
Yeah, I mean, listen, when there's very distinct cues as to whether or not you hit the record button, such as a tiny lady in your ear saying, recording in progress. You don't hear that?
No.
And you're just like, what the heck happened? And I'm looking down, I'm like, I don't see the green record. I didn't see it turn off. And I realized that none of us hit the record button.
No.
So listen, we're installing the playbook. You know, we're working through the ones and twos right now. Some things are working, some things are not, but we have a great show for you. Because we've done it before.
We know for sure that this is a great show for you because
this is a top-notch show. I just want to be clear about that. This is a great show.
We have done it before, and I'm confident. I'm okay with that being a lead, but the actual lead of the show is a little bit different. When I started buying the college preview magazines, Athlon does hold the entire list of bowl projections. And I wanted to point out the one here that I literally opened this up to this page, and the first thing that my eyes settled on, you can see the circle right there. It's the Bahamas Bowl. The Bahamas Bowl will be, according to our friends at Athlon, Middle Tennessee State versus Ohio University. We were excited about this for many reasons. My Bobcats, obviously, Carla's the Blue Raiders. But we were excited because this would further our contention that Middle Tennessee State head coach Rick Stockstill has the best job in America. He's gone to the Bahamas multiple times. Last season he won the Hawaii Bowl.
Yes.
And so as we were discussing these things, the bowl projections, Carla's like, what if we tried to get him on the show? She brought this up earlier in the spring, but this was a sort of a memory jog, and she's like, well, let me make a call. And to the surprise of pretty much everyone, Middle
not
Tennessee.
To the surprise of anyone, Carla's got pull like that. That's what we're.
That's true.
Carla's got pull in the athletic department of Middle Tennessee State University.
So apparently so, because this is our very first interview with a sitting head college football coach who joined us earlier this summer. This is Rick Stockstill of your Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, talking with the Carla and Crappy Show about a whole bunch of stuff. Let's take a listen. Folks, the Carla and Crappy Show could not be more pleased to welcome a very special guest to our summertime show. Middle Tennessee head coach Rick Stockstill is taking some time out from his off season and a summer camp, I believe, to join us for a few minutes. Coach, how you doing?
I'm great. I appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing well and enjoying the start of the summer.
We are enjoying the start of the summer. How's your off season? To the extent that a D1 college football coach gets one, how's your off season going?
Yeah, it's been good. We had our camps every, buddy, in America, you're limited to 10 days of camps.
Yep.
So we finished those last week, and our kids are here. They came back. They finished exams that first week of May, and then they came back June 4th, and, they've been working out and everything. And then this weekend, or actually Monday, this coming Monday, starts the dead period for college coaches, where high school kids are not allowed to be on college campuses and visit with college coaches. So the dead period starts Monday, and that's kind of when all college coaches will get away for a couple weeks.
Okay, well, I hope you get to relax for a little bit for that period. I want to go back to preface my first question. I want to go back to 1981. I was and am an Ohio State fan, as you might be able to see in the background with this stuff back there. Florida State came into Columbus. A quarterback named Rick Stockstill threw for 300 yards against a defensive backfield that was coached by Nick Saban. What do you recall that day? Because I do. I do.
I recall the day, but I didn't realize until I got into the coaching profession that Coach Saban was on that staff. But, I was born in Ohio, and then we moved to Kentucky when I was like a year old. But my dad and my grandfather and, myself, we grew up Ohio State fans, and Rex quarterback and all that. So going back to that day, or that playing that game, was special. It had a special meaning, more to me than some of my teammates at, Florida State, just because of the Ohio State background that I grew up in and everything. So that was a special day, and I still cherish that day to today.
My memories are a bit different, as you might imagine, but I do remember. You get to see Coach Saban again to start the season off this year. As you head into Bryant-Denny, what are your goals for that game? For on the field, for recruiting, for exposure? What does that game do for you guys?
Well, we played them in 2015. We went down there and played them, and so it's a tremendous challenge for us. You ask about expectations. Our expectation is to go down there and play well and win the game. I know we'll probably end up being 40-point underdogs, all that kind of stuff, but we've been underdogs before and have, surprised some people. So the big thing is, in opening games, there's so many unknowns, for both of us, for Alabama and for us. So, but our expectation is to go down and play well, and we're going to get, it'll be on TV, and a lot of people will see it just because of, Alabama, and then, we're going to get a pretty good little paycheck out of it.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to do at the Group of Five level. We all, we'll play 2 or 3 Power 5 guys to help supplement, your budget, for the other sports and everything else going on within your athletic department. So, but, we're not going to be in all. I understand the tradition and how good Alabama is, and our players will know that also, but we're not going to walk in there scared or intimidated, and we'll go in there and give it our best shot, and do everything we can to hopefully walk out of that with a win.
Okay. In terms of exposure, you guys are doing something, the conference is doing something a little bit different this year. The weeknight primetime games in October. Do you have a feel for how that kind of exposure is going to benefit your program versus playing on the road at an Alabama? Are they comparable, or how are you looking at those primetime games?
Probably a little bit different, just because there's going to be more conference games going on during that month of October. And I didn't realize, you hear MAC action. They've been doing it, for a long time. And I've talked to a lot of their coaches in the MAC about planning. To me, this has created a really big issue for me, or for all of us. I can't speak for the other schools in the Conference USA, but for me, when you look at this, we're playing 2 games in 6 days. We're playing 3 games in 12 days. We're playing 4 games in 18 days. we're playing 5 games in 25 games, and then we go 18 days where we don't play.
Mhm.
So I've really put a lot of time, a lot of effort into trying to prepare for this stretch, because how you're going to be able to practice, plus you got to give a day off in each week. So how much are you going to be able to implement in a game plan? You get a guy with a sprained ankle, he may end up missing 2 or 3 games, where
True.
in a normal course of the week he only may miss 1. So this is going to really stress our programs, our teams, going through this stretch. The MAC, they know they're playing it. Those are their last 4 games of the year,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
they're either going to, play a Tuesday and then the next Tuesday, or a Tuesday and then a Wednesday, or a Wednesday and a Tuesday. Ours are Thursday to a Wednesday, Wednesday to a Tuesday, Tuesday to another Tuesday. It's really created a lot of stress on me, just trying to make sure that we're doing the right things to give our players, from a safety standpoint, a recovery standpoint, so that we can put the best product out there that we can. So I'm more concerned about that stretch than I am the Alabama game.
Okay. Carla?
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off of that, being the faculty member on this show. Understanding, I was that midweek schedule. You're also balancing the student athlete.
Right.
Too. And, as a faculty member, I look at that, and as a group of 5 football fan, I'm thrilled to see midweek football on Tuesday, Wednesday, earlier in the season. Right. Because I love Maction, and, that's kind of a thing that we do here. So I'm interested in how do you prepare your team to balance all? I know you just kind of got into that a little bit, but how do you prepare your team to balance what you're talking about with the academic side of things too? Because I'm torn, right? As a faculty member, I'm excited to have the energy on campus, but I'm like, this is going to impact my class attendance. It's going to impact testing times. It's going to, I'm looking at a football schedule, putting together my syllabus for the semester. How do you help coach the students through that process?
Yeah, that's a great concern of ours too. And one thing, we're fortunate this year that 2 of those midweek games are at home.
Yeah.
One of them is at Western Kentucky, and then the other one's at Liberty. So that's getting back late. Next year, if it's going to New Mexico State or to UTEP, now you're looking at 2 different time zones. So now you're getting back really, really 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning the next day. So next year could be a little bit more, but I've done everything I could to move our flights back.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we go to Liberty, to move it back as late as I could. I think we played them on a Tuesday, to move it back as late as I could on Monday. So our guys can at least go to class, on Monday. Their class is there. Obviously they'll miss Tuesday, and then getting back late, Tuesday night after the game. I've just got to do a good job of, you got to get to class, on Wednesday. So it is an issue. It's going to be a thing that, when the NCAA or even Conference USA, you look at the safety and the health of the student welfare. That's the number one, student athlete welfare. Part of that concern is the academic side of it. So not only do we have to manage the health standpoint of playing that many games in a short amount of days, you've also got to be cognizant of, what they're really here for, and that's to get their education.
Yeah.
Coach, hi, this is AJ. Have you talked to any of the other sports that play, like, I'm thinking soccer or basketball or maybe even like tennis, where they play more midweek or more games during the week versus on Saturdays, and how they handle their travel schedules and academics that way too?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it leads me to, I've never asked a MAC coach that question, and I'm going to do that when we hang up. So that's a great point. I have talked to our basketball coach because they play a lot of Thursday and then the weekend game. Baseball, they're more, a midweek game that's kind of at home. And then when they travel for the weekend, it's a bus trip. They're going a little bit further where they've got more, I think, more time to, football, you fly in, you get the hotel, you eat, you meet, you play the game, you fly back, and as much as you want to act like, hey, or make sure you guys are studying on the plane, all that, they ain't doing it, and I'm not going to sit here and, act like they are. But with a baseball team, where they're traveling on a bus or they're at a hotel longer than what we are when we travel, they've got a little bit more time to keep up with it. So, but that's a great point. And I've talked to basketball a little bit about it, but I'm definitely going to call the MAC coaches and lean on them a little bit to see if they do anything different in how they handle it.
Okay. Carla?
Yeah, I'd like to get into a little bit more of a fun topic now. Looking at your schedule and the success that you've had against, going to Bryant-Denny in week 1, obviously that's the big name flasher, right? But you had a game like that last year, going down to Miami, won that game, became, that was a game that we talked about on the show last year. And that was kind of when we really went all in on the Blue Raider bandwagon. You had a regular segment on our show last year after that win. How does that impact the way that you're able to schedule some of these, larger Power 5 schools? Because you've had a great deal of success. In fact, Colorado State is coming to Murfreesboro for homecoming this year. And you beat them on the road. So how does that help the scheduling process of being able to play those teams and also impact kind of the way that you're able to recruit to MTSU?
Yeah, again, that was a tremendous win for us, and all the Power 5s, they want to play. They want to play. We don't have any trouble, usually, hey, Power 5, you want to play, because they're all looking to play us, not Middle Tennessee in particular, but the group of 5, because in their mind, they're writing it in. That's 1 win. That's 2 wins. They get 4 out of conference wins. Now they only have to get 2 in conference wins, and they're bowl eligible. So they're all looking. Power 5s are all looking to play as many group of 5s as they can. But like I said earlier, we're not going to back down, from anybody. And Syracuse, Missouri, Georgia Tech, Maryland's. We're going to play, and we're not going to take a back seat to anybody. And we're not supposed to beat them on paper. We're not supposed to beat them, but you don't play the game on paper
Sometimes.
And so we're fired up about going to Alabama. Then the next week we go to Missouri. We play, so we open up with 2 SEC teams. And in 2016, we had a shootout with Missouri and beat them 51-45, I think it was, on their homecoming. So I know this isn't proper English, and I'm talking to a professor, but we ain't scared of nobody. And just again, they're licking their chops for us, and we're licking our chops for them. So we're going to go in there and play and, roll it out there and give it our best shot. But it helps, we used it in recruiting. You go, like I went to Florida State, had a football camp last week that our staff went to, and we were down there, and Mike Norvell, the head coach at Florida State, talking to him, and, he said, so glad what you did to that team down south. And, so our coaches go on the road recruiting, and man, I saw the Miami game and, and all that stuff. So it's I tell our guys all the time, recruiting guys, that you can accomplish all your goals here just like you can anywhere else. You're going to get a great education. You're going to play on TV. You got a chance to, go to bowl games, win championships, all that stuff. And, play against the so-called best players in the country. We played against them and we beat the so-called best players in the country.
Sure. Coach, we're going to wrap this up with one more question from AJ.
So as Mike has on his shirt, the reigning Hawaii Bowl champions, you've been to a number of other fun bowl games, the Bahamas Bowl. You honestly brought a bowl game culture to middle. I mean, before that, there wasn't a ton of bowl appearances for the school. What's been your favorite bowl experience so far? I mean, you've got to go to a bunch of different fun places. So what's been your favorite so far?
Yeah. Again, my first year here in 06 was the Motor City Bowl. And that's the first bowl that Middle Tennessee had ever been to. Conference USA has great destination bowls. And to me, the best bowls are the ones you win. I've never been to a bad bowl. All the bowls are great experiences for the players, but when you win them, it just makes them that much more enjoyable. So, these last two have been really special because, and I've been to 10 bowls since I've been here, and we've been the underdog in every one of them except one. And, so the Camellia Bowl was special in 17, and for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons outside of football, while it was special to me. And then these last two, the Bahamas and Hawaii, were, because of who we beat, being the underdogs, the amount of point underdog we were to beat them, double-digit underdogs, and you beat them, were special wins for us.
And so because you guys have, as you mentioned, a bunch of, the Conference USA really does have a bunch of really great destination bowls. Do you have the best job in the country? In my opinion, you do. But do you have the best job in the country?
That is.
Yeah, I mean, every coach you're going to have on here is going to say that. And I've never been one to, do the politically correct thing. But I love my job here. I love our players. I love everybody involved in this program, administration, everybody. So, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to do something that I love doing. I pour my heart and soul into this job every day. And I love our staff. I love our players. And I just try to give this university and this football program my best effort every day. And I love coaching here, and can't wait to get this thing started again.
Coach, we so appreciate the time that you've been able to give us today. You've got 3 fans on this show, and we will keep following you through this season, and see where you end up if in a bowl game come December. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the off season, and we'll follow what you guys are doing all year.
I appreciate it. It was an honor to be on it. Appreciate and respect what you guys do. And if you ever want me on again, all you got to do is holler at me.
Thank you, Coach.
Awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate it. Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. See you. Have a good summer.
You too.
You too.
Okie doke. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Guys, I don't want to sound like we're patting ourselves on the back here, but that was a good interview, right?
Yeah, that was a top-notch interview. Nobody's done it better. Most of the time, honestly, most of the time when you get
just rewrite the books of sports podcasting right there.
Of course, right there. But I think part of it is a lot of times when you, Coach, tell us about what you're doing this fall with camp, and it's less about that. I think we set out to ask questions that aren't about that, right? Everybody's going to ask about those things. And Carla, I think you rightfully were asking things as a faculty member, really, of how does this affect the students and what they do in the classroom, because that is a thing. These are still students, even though they're athletes who potentially go on to lucrative NFL careers, they're still students right now, and they're going to class. So it was interesting to hear that sort of perspective and like what goes into travel when you're not playing games on Saturdays and you're playing games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. What does that change for everything?
The idea of the gaps in their schedule, having to turn around and play 2 games in 7 days, and then the fact that they have like a 2-week layoff once the primetime schedule part of the schedule is over is crazy. And Carla, I know that was eye-opening for you.
Yeah, well, and the thing that stood out to me was like, okay, yes, as a faculty member, I'm concerned about class. I'm concerned about how do I help as a faculty member keep these students, where they need to be. But the piece that I hadn't thought about that he brought up in that interview was the injury piece. And the fact that the time is so much shorter between games. That's something I'd never even thought about. You tweak an ankle at the beginning of that run, and instead of just missing the next game, you might miss the next 2 or 3 because you don't have enough time to rehab it. So it'll be real interesting to see how this all plays out in the CUSA schedule this year. If, does a team get impacted by an injury early on in that stretch of playing primetime games that really could derail a team's season depending on who it is. Right. And so that's gonna be really interesting to watch. So, so I'm grateful for Coach for joining us. I have to say a special thank you to Mark Owens, who is the sports information director, for MTSU, for setting that up for us. He was working with me I from his cell phone. So, because most of the emails that I got back from him were from a phone. So, so thank you, Mark. And thank you, Rick. I park right outside. This got cut out of the recorded interview, but I park right outside Floyd Stadium. That's where my office is right there. And so, so I will make sure to salute the MTSU flag as I walk in every day. And if I see Coach on campus during faculty meetings, because he has to go to faculty meetings. He's a member of right. So, so if I run into him during faculty meetings here in a couple of weeks, I will definitely make sure I go over and say hi.
Tell our close personal friend, Rick Stockstill, that we all said hello.
He did say that we should have him on whenever we want to. Is this now the coach's show for MTSU football? Like, you have to listen to the Carla and Crappy Show to hear Coach break down that 3rd and 1. How is that how this works now?
Can we work on that? The possibility every week.
Mark,
maybe. Hello. I'm hearing crickets from the Middle Tennessee SID office. So far this summer, we haven't had the kind of earth-shattering news that we have that prompted like the last couple summertime shows. Like last year, you hear that the USC and UCLA are going to join the Big Ten. It's like, oh, geez, we need to do a show like right now, because that is a huge thing. Nothing like that going on in the college football world, but there is stuff that's happening. Or in the case of the Pac-12, there are things that are not happening, like TV, AJ, right?
Yes. So last summer, the Big Ten getting the $1 billion from CBS, Fox, and NBC, the SEC getting the season before a gigantic pile of money from ESPN to go be their sole TV provider. The Big 12 actually jumped the Pac-12 in line and renegotiated their deal as part of bringing in the 3 American schools, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, along with BYU, to settle in at about a $31 million per school TV grant of rights deal. The Pac-12, though, their TV deal is up next year. And right around now is generally where teams will start to, or conferences, will start to finalize those TV deals, because they want to have something in place so that everybody knows what the money is going forward into the future seasons. With USC and UCLA, the LA schools, leaving for the Big Ten, it kind of left a big old hole in their roster of teams to be able to bring back into the fold.
A big Los Angeles-sized hole.
A big old Los Angeles-sized hole. So everybody's been kind of wondering what the Pac-12 is going to do for a TV deal, because if you don't have the LA market as a thing that is going to drive eyeballs, I'm sorry, Oregon and Utah and Colorado and Northern California, you're not driving the same eyeballs as LA does. So how do you make a TV deal out of that? There has been rumors over and over and over again, including things like the CW, in order to stay on linear, regular network television.
Which I was not aware that the CW was still a thing.
Still very much a thing if you're a DC Comics fan, but for everybody else, not so much.
Sure.
But the CW was an option. They were talking about maybe Apple or Amazon and going full in on streaming, and were mostly talked out of that by most of the head football coaches who were like, listen, mama wants to see her boy on TV, like regular TV, and not have to go sign up for the $7 a month Apple TV Plus plan. So these are the things that go into a TV deal. There's been rumors that they're going to finalize something in the next 3 weeks, 30 days, 3 weeks, 30 days, for 6 months now. Their media days are on July 21st. And everything is pointing to having to have something in place by that time. If they do not have something in place by that time, the entirety of the media days is just going to be, where's your TV deal? Where's your TV deal? Where's your TV deal?
Yeah, you don't get to talk about anything else. That's going to be, that would be a mess.
And so it's not great for the players, for the coaches, for the fans, because all they want to know is, okay, where am I going to watch my games? That great, and move on. So there is an accelerated timeline. The presidents of the Pac-12 schools, they are the ones who sign off on the deals, not the athletic directors, have been briefed on what the conference is planning and how they're planning to move forward. There is a theory put forth by John Canzano, who is one of like the 3 people you should trust on the Pac-12, theorizing that it could be that they've discovered a financial advantage to waiting until next year to invite 2 more members. They are at 10 teams right now. They're not at 12. If they sign a deal right now and they don't have these other 2 teams, wherever they may be, they may get less money because that doesn't include that market, right? And they're not going to go renegotiate it later. So potentially you do the new TV deal with a San Diego State, we'll get to them in a moment, or other schools involved in that being a thing. This may also be complicated by ESPN laying off people. They've laid off Max Kellerman, Todd McShay, Susie Kolber, like big name people at their network to save money. Disney is in a cost-cutting phase right now, and going out and spending a bunch of money on Pac-12 sports in general does not strike them as something that they want to do.
Right.
I don't see them getting any more money than the Big 10 or the Big 12 got, which is like 31 million a school, which is, I think, far less than the probably 40 that the Pac-12 wanted to go get. So they don't have a TV deal yet, and it's starting to become a bit of a problem that everybody will not stop focusing on. And the Pac-12 would really like everybody to focus on the fact that they have some of the best quarterbacks in the country, and they're going to be a stupid fun conference this fall. So being able to have some place to watch them, you'll be able to watch them on regular TV this year. Next year will become a problem if they don't have one. So that's where the Pac-12's TV deal sits. It is the exact opposite of what the Big Ten had last year, where everything was fleshed out and here's all the money. The Pac-12 has the exact opposite of that.
Okay. Filling that Los Angeles-sized hold with a school from San Diego isn't going to quite get them there, but it's a possibility, or no? What is Brady Hoke doing?
So Brady Hoke and the
not that Brady's actually doing this.
Brady's not doing anything. I just want to go play football outside with my friends.
Brady's riding around on his yacht.
Yeah, Brady Hoke has a ton of money right now from San Diego State to do things like not pay attention to what his players are doing in off-campus parties. But the Mountain West received a letter from San Diego State that says that they're leaving. San Diego State is debating whether they said they were leaving or not. The actual letter, as retrieved by Matt Brown of Extra Points from a FOIA request, states, and I will read as following: Dear Mountain West Conference and all members, this is from University President. I want to get the name right. Adela De La Torre, who Dr. De La Torre, who's the president of San Diego State University, sent a letter to the Mountain West Conference stating, as shared with Commissioner Navarez at our June 2023 Board of Directors meeting, this letter is to formally notice that San Diego State University intends to resign from the Mountain West Conference effective June 30th, 2024, or at an agreed upon later date. It has been an absolute joy to collaborate and compete with each of the member universities. In order to exit as efficiently and as fairly as possible, I would like to respectfully make the following request for your consideration. They are asking for a 1-month extension given unforeseen delays involving other collegiate athletic conferences beyond our control. So basically they said, we're leaving and can we have an extension, which seems silly. And then they also are discussing the exit fee because they're of the concept of NCAA tournament units, which is the money you're paid for being in the NCAA basketball tournament. San Diego State was in the title game, so they're going to get a large amount of money.
They would have a lot of units.
Yes.
If they leave, they don't get any of it.
Oh,
so they're trying to figure out like, hey, we're leaving, but can we get some of that money? Because we made the conference, or we made the NCAA title game. We would like some of that money. The Mountain West has responded with, thank you for your consideration.
bye.
Goodbye. Pay your exit fee, which is $17 million. It is a very large sum of money that that San Diego State does not want to pay. They are trying to avoid doing this and potentially offset it with new conference. But if their new conference is the Pac-12, who doesn't have a TV deal, they don't know how much money they're going to get from going to the Pac-12. So this is where all of this kind of comes together and melds. Potentially they go to the Big 12. Potentially they don't. But Mountain West thinks that San Diego State is leaving. San Diego State is not entirely sure that they're leaving. And it is a big mess over there as well. So if you like West Coast football, everything's a mess. It's really what I can say.
Okay, I was going to say we're used to silliness on the West Coast, but the silliness usually has to do with quarterbacks and offense, and not this kind of stuff. But we will see how that goes. We have our own silliness.
Praise the Lord for FOIA requests.
That was yes, to be able to have that letter. That's
I have the entire correspondence chain too. There's more.
That's fantastic.
But it all breaks down to Mountain West saying like, "No, your first notice was fine.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Pay your exit fee. Thanks for playing."
We're good. There's some silliness in the Big Ten. The conference has released its scheduling format that's going to be in place for at least the next couple of seasons. Not this season, but 24-25. They introduced the idea of protected rivalries. There are 11 of these. Some teams have one, some teams have several. One team has none. Carla, it makes sense to turn this over to you right now.
Yeah, because that one team that doesn't have a protected rival is Penn State.
Unrivaled. It says it right there, all over Beaver Stadium.
Right in the stadium says it.
Yep.
You said it out loud, and then you spoke it into existence.
It has happened.
And then they took it literally.
This obviously, for the purposes of this show, with me being the Ohio State guy and Carla being the Penn State fan, we want this game to happen. We want this game to happen every year. We think. Right. I'm going to speak for Carla. We think that it should easily be a protected rivalry for each school, but for whatever reason, it's not. And hoping that this is a temporary thing, but at least for those couple of seasons, it presents strength of schedule questions and all kinds of stuff, right, Carla?
Yeah, I mean, so when you look at the schedule, the way they've released the schedule for both the 2024 season and the 25 season, in addition to these protected rivalries, they have these like home and home that they've scheduled out. So if you don't have a protected rivalry, there are 3 teams that you are guaranteed to play in both 24 and 25, and you'll play them 1 year at home and 1 year on the road. And so for Penn State, we've got 3 of those games because there aren't any protected rivalries. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, the team, one of the teams that's there is Sparty, is Michigan State, because I mean, while I consider Ohio State to be a bigger rival, I get more amped about the Ohio State game. What game always makes me nervous every year? That's the Sparty game. That's a trophy game, right? And so in the way that this is currently being scheduled, because Sparty is not a protected rival of Penn State, there will be years, if this continues on, that there is not a land-grant trophy game. Which to me just kind of blows my mind. In 2024, Penn State does play Ohio State, but they don't play Michigan. And then the reverse is true in 2025. Penn State plays Michigan, but not Ohio State. And if you're looking at this Penn State team, and what we saw last year on the field from, the two freshman running backs, Singleton and Allen, that are going to be spectacular as a duo. And you've got, Drew Allard coming up at quarterback. We talked about this at the end of the year last year about how excited I am about the next 2 years of Penn State football.
And how excited I am not.
Right. But I'm very excited about it. And you can make an argument here that like the 24-25 seasons, if this team stays together, that those are going to be critical seasons for a potential playoff national title run. Like when you have those key players in those positions, and there is a legitimate argument in their schedule here that they won't play one of those key opponents. Now, that was my first kind of, when I first saw that, I was like, well, geez, that's going to be a knock in 24 if Penn State is undefeated, but they didn't play Michigan. Is that going to be a knock on a strength of schedule? And then it occurred to me that now that one of the other parts of this in the media rights deal is that they got rid of divisions. And so now just the top two teams in the Big Ten will play each other, which I think is a good thing for the conference overall. And it means that if Penn State needed to play Michigan to get into a potential playoff situation, that in theory they would meet in the title game. So that's kind of the setup here. But I mean, as a fan, I don't love it. I don't love the fact that there isn't at least one predictable game on the schedule. I'm hoping that this is just a 2-year experiment and that they reconsider and at least add a protected rival for Penn State. So there's at least one game that we know for sure. And another interesting thing is, and I think what they're trying to do here, I think they're kind of hedging their bet a little bit with USC, because see, Penn State and USC go back. They've been kind of rivals for a while now. And one of the other teams that's in that home and home for Penn State in 24 and 25 is USC. So Penn State will play USC in both 24 and 25. And so I'm kind of wondering if they're waiting to see how SC and LA kind of move into the Big Ten, and if that becomes the protected rivalry, depending on whether or not the Big Ten is able to poach 2 more teams from the Pac-12. But we won't know that until what AJ just talked about with the Pac-12 media rights, right? So everything hinges on this Pac-12 media rights deal.
It all comes together.
It all comes together in a puzzle. But yeah, as a fan, I don't love it. And not knowing, the whiteout games aren't going to be as exciting because most of the big time games are happening earlier in the day now. That's the way that the hierarchy, top pick, second pick. So your whiteout game could be like against like Illinois or like, it's just, it takes some of the mystique out of Happy Valley. And as a fan, I don't love that.
Okay.
Yeah, just looking at the 2024-2025, which the Big Ten has published who you're playing in both of those seasons already. Penn State in 2024 has a very favorable home schedule. You get Michigan State, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, and USC at home in Happy Valley. So ticket value, season ticket holder value for Penn State, very high for 2024. In 2024, the away games are Indiana, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. So pretty easy road slate for 2024. It flips in 2025. The away games are Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, and USC. And at home in 2025 is Illinois, Minnesota, Rutgers, UCLA. So value way down. It's very interesting to me looking at that because I think Penn State has done a relatively good job of bringing in external teams. So next year, Penn State goes to West Virginia. In 2025, they have Nevada and Villanova at home, which are not exactly great home games either. So 2025, it's a really weak home schedule, a really rough road schedule. So there is a big sort of push for these two conferences or for these teams to try to bring in. Penn State's going to have to do if they continue to do this, there's no protected rivals. Penn State's going to have to go out and get better teams to come in and do home and homes in order to bolster sometimes their schedule in these sorts of spaces. It's very funny to me that Iowa has 3 protected games. The quadrangle of hate lives. So they get Minnesota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. Penn State has none. Ohio State just has Michigan. Michigan has Michigan State and Ohio State. So it was kind of random, but there is one game
One
that is
game.
protected. One game.
Do we know when this
must be
game's
protected?
Do we have the date for this? We need to circle it on the calendars and
Yeah, I think, hold on, let me just make sure that we are all circling this all on our calendars for 2024. Date TBA. It's TBA. It's
Okay,
too
okay.
early to tell.
damn.
But Maryland Rutgers is protected. We have to have Maryland Rutgers every year, everyone.
I
The
think
time-space continuum tears into shreds.
I think we should do a remote show from the site of Maryland Rutgers in 2024.
I mean,
That's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, but who wants to go to Piscataway?
but
Hopefully,
it's no. You do this. You do the show from New York because it's New York's team. That's
Right.
Yes,
that's been decided.
Yes.
That's New York's team. Definitely not Syracuse, which is in the actual state of New York. It is Rutgers. And yeah, you just do the show from New York, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're in the home of Rutgers, New York City, New York. Yeah, totally. The state University of New Jersey.
As a fan, I am not not really digging this either. The fact that Ohio State, Ohio and Pennsylvania are contiguous states. The games have been crazy competitive.
It's a game day game every year.
It is
Every
a
year.
game day game every single year, and it should continue to be so. I do like the idea of doing away with the divisions, although it shatters my hopes and dreams of having a pork and a beef division for the Big Ten. I just
Bring
think
back
that-
legends and leaders is what I'm hearing.
No. That's going to help with the conference title game, which generally, with Wisconsin, that program waning, that's just been a rubber stamp for the East in recent years. So that's going to help, and it will make up. If this continues past a couple of years and Ohio State and Penn State is not a regular thing, it could very well be that becomes a more regular thing for a conference championship game. Yeah, okay. But those two teams should be playing each other, period. And that's something that the Big Ten has to address as we head past 2025 and into the future. I mentioned Wisconsin. And the fact that they've been not so good recently. They have a new coach, Luke Fickell. Maybe he can turn things around, maybe not. We are let's get into this the idea of whether or not we are buying or selling a few programs for 2023. This is for this year. You will hear some caveats about what happens in the future as we talk about these guys. But we can start there. For maybe one of the big coaching hires of the offseason was Luke Fickell from Cincinnati to Wisconsin. He's back in the conference. I am sad that it's not at Ohio State, but whatever. Carla,
How'd that work last time?
totally different situation. So if we're talking about Wisconsin, the question: buying or selling? AJ, what do you think?
I'm torn.
Okay.
Largely because I think Luke Fickell is a great coach. I think what they want to do is super interesting. They're bringing in Chip Long, who was the OC at UNC, known for wanting to go, score a ton of points, throw 1,000,000 yards a game. They're bringing in Tanner Mordecai, who is a very good quarterback out of SMU, who threw like 9
throw for
touchdowns
that
or
much.
whatever,
Yeah.
who can do all of that. I question the receiving core. I don't know that Wisconsin has the guys in the receiving room for that. And I would also say that how does that affect their defense? This is a completely new system. Like, I'm selling early, but willing to buy later in like October if it shows that it's going to work. But right now it feels like there's too much change for me to buy this year. Next year, that's a potentially different story.
Okay, Carla, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Fickle's a great hire. And
Mhm.
we talked about that at the end of the season last year about how when he was hired there, I was like, ooh, that feels like a fit. Right.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of changes that need to happen there. And bringing in a whole new system. I want Wisconsin to be competitive again in the Big Ten. It's a much more fun league when when we're complaining about the stinking Badgers, right?
Yes.
Like it hasn't felt like the Big Ten when we haven't had a really solid Wisconsin team up there to contend with.
True.
I think Fickle's going to get it done. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. So can I do a hold, buy, sell, hold, right? So can I do a hold on Wisconsin, and say, not this year, but they're going to be good.
Okay. I agree. Not this year. Too much change on the offensive side of the ball. Fickle's defense will look familiar to the folks up there in Madison. The offense will not. It's the offense that's going to be a shock to their system. And it may be a shock to the system of everybody else in the program, but a year to kind of get things settled, get everything in place, and then that's unfortunately going to be a scary good program at some point again. Staying in the conference, Nebraska, Carla, are you buying or selling?
Same kind of thing, right?
Yep.
To me, it's very similar situation that I'm kind of in a hold on Nebraska. I think Matt Rule was an excellent hire there.
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably will be able to turn things around maybe a little bit more quickly just because of the way that he coaches and who he has right now at Nebraska, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They should still be pretty good. But it's a whole new, same thing. It's a whole new offense, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're bringing in transfer quarterback Jeff Sims, who is from Georgia Tech. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how he fits in Big Ten land. So I think it's just going to be a year or so, with Rule. So I'm in a holding pattern there. Nebraska's going to be back. I think they'll be bowl eligible this year. And I think if they are bowl eligible, I think that's going to help appease the fan base because they've just not been there for a while. So if he can get them bowl eligible, even if it's a lower tier bowl, I think that's a step in the right direction for the Huskers.
That would be a total win given everything that they've been through the past few years. AJ, Nebraska, buying or selling?
I'm buying.
Okay.
Matt Rule, for that same sort of, it's for the reason that Carla mentioned at the very end there, getting the fan base on board.
Okay.
Scott Frost, their previous head coach, I think was sort of living off of being the quarterback the last time Nebraska was truly great. And kind of was letting that carry him versus Matt Rule, who's having to come in and like establish relationships with everybody. There was a story that came out that he went like down the street to the high school that is nearby in Lincoln, nearby the stadium. You can literally see the stadium from this high school's campus,
mm-hmm.
and met with the head coach and the athletic director. And they said a Nebraska head coach hasn't done that in like a decade, which is massive.
That's insane.
Bananas to me, right?
Yeah. That's crazy that they wouldn't do that.
I think they have a favorable schedule. They have they start the season at Minnesota in week 0. Then they go to Colorado, and Colorado's a mess. We'll get to them in a moment. Then they have NIU and Louisiana Tech at home, and then Michigan at home, and then at Illinois before the bye week. They could potentially be 4-2
mm-hmm.
in there
mm-hmm.
somewhere. And then they still have Northwestern, Purdue, and Maryland in the back half of the schedule. Yeah, bowl eligibility is 1,000% on the table here. And I think just going back to a bowl would be a massive shift for Nebraska, given what the later end of the Scott Frost era was. I think Matt Rule's a good coach. I think Jeff Sims coming in, he was a really great quarterback. He just couldn't stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They took Clemson to the wire at one point at Georgia Tech during the Jeff Collins era. So I think there's some opportunity for Matt Rule to do really, really well here. They're portaling well. They're recruiting much better than they were before. So I think this is a potential turnaround for Nebraska. And it would be great to see them back being good again instead of being jokes like they have been recently.
I've said for many years, and I was referring to Michigan when Michigan's football program was not especially good, that it's bad for the Big Ten for its name programs to be bad. And it's bad for everybody in the conference, and that applies to Nebraska as well, and Wisconsin for that matter. It is not good for the conference when those teams are not good, and it would be beneficial for the conference and everybody in it for Nebraska to be what Nebraska football kind of has always been. I'm not talking about winning national titles every other year. Let's not get crazy, but for them to be good, I don't know how much of this came from the top down. I felt like that program was a real mess, and so I'm a little more cautious, I think, than you guys are. I'm selling for sure. That does not mean I don't think Matt Rule's. I think Matt Rule's going to be the right guy. He's putting in the work, as AJ said. But this year, bowl eligible would be unreal. So that maybe that's the goal. Also, AJ, did you make up the word portaling?
No.
Okay, good.
I think portaling's been a thing. It's a verb.
I was gonna. We coined so many phrases last year. I was just wanted to make sure I had not come across.
It's the 2023 Mortable.
If we made it up, but if 20 did put, okay. Florida State, Florida State. Are we buying or selling? Carla, does Florida State look mortable to you?
Okay, so Florida State has bitten us how many times in the past, right? In the last couple of seasons where we're like,
a few.
This is it. This is Florida State is back. Florida State's going to contend in the ACC. And then something weird happens. There's injuries, there's an inexplicable loss, there's, all those kinds of things. I hesitate to say this, but when you look at Florida State this year, you have to buy them.
Yeah.
And to the extent that I think they could be a real contender this year. They finished the season last year really strongly. So many returning starters on offense. Their defense, they plugged a whole bunch of holes. I'll use AJ's verb here, portaling. Florida State portaled very well also, and plugged a lot of holes with players with experience from other programs on defense. The two big tests that I see on the schedule is they play at Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a big test because Clemson, whether we like it or not, is still kind of the darling of the ACC. And if you're going to win a conference title, you've got to beat the Tigers, and doing it on the road would be an extra bolster to their strength of schedule. And then we get a rematch where they open against LSU at a neutral site in Orlando. And that was the game that went sideways last year. That the LSU won at the very end. That was just absolutely bonkers. And so we get that game again this year. That'll be a lot of fun. But neutral site, SEC opponent, right? So those are the two big tests. But I really like. God, it pains me to say that. I really like Florida State this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm buying.
Okay, AJ, what do you think?
To Carla's point, yes, they play LSU and Clemson before the bye week. And also, after LSU, do not get it twisted. They play Southern Miss. Southern Miss ain't nothing to mess with.
That's true.
They're very, very good. And they have to go to Boston College. So all of that, they have one home game before the bye week. One actual home game before the bye week. So they start the season rough. But if they do, and they get through that at 4-0, they're going to have to trip over something in order to not finish undefeated. I will say that they finished the season. They've got a cupcake game in the middle, but they finished the season home against Miami, cupcake game at the Swamp against Florida. So they played the triangle of Miami, Florida, and Florida State. They played the triangle to end the season. That is not anything to sneeze at. So I'm buying Florida State. I think they finally have a line. Looking at their depth chart, their line is seniors and juniors. They have Travis Jordan, who is a senior, or Jordan Travis, excuse me. He could be a Georgia quarterback because you can flip his name around. But Jordan Travis is a senior, but he is fantastic. He is truly that dude. It's a this is a big deal. They have the talent on both lines. They have the talent at the skill positions. If this is the year that they finally put it all together, this is the year, and they have a schedule that could put them into the playoff if they win their way through.
I'm buying for sure. I think they are an ACC title contender. We'll find out quickly, as AJ said, before their bye week. But yeah, that program on paper looks to be rock solid. The quarterback situation in Texas makes this pick a little squishier. AJ, you buying or selling?
I'm hold. I'm gonna take Carlos.
Layaway. You're gonna be on layaway.
It's a hold. I'm putting it on layaway. Like, they have a very good quarterback already in Quinn Ewers. They have an NFL first round wide receiver in Xavier Worthy. They lost Bijan Robinson, their first round NFL running back, to the draft. They can put up points if they want to. Their line is all juniors and seniors. Like, they have experience in all of the right places. But Arch Manning is right there on that roster, and I can't imagine that they're going to want him to sit too terribly long. And Ewers is, I believe, a redshirt sophomore. So you have he's going to be sitting there kind of like, okay, when are we putting Arch in? When are we putting Arch in? He's the number one recruit. He's a Manning. When are we putting Arch in? And that's going to be the dominant conversation for the entire season. It's going to be the dumbest conversation. And they can't do what Michigan did last year, where they had they had McCarthy start one game, and I forget who the other one was, who started the other game, and then they kind of figured it out from there as to what they wanted to do. They play Rice game 1. They go to Alabama game 2. Now, I know they'll be beat up by the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, but that's not a great way to start your season. They don't have 2 gimme games and then a big game. Week 2 is the big game. So I can see them potentially starting both, or having one start the first half, one start the second half, but you're going to be in you have 2 quarterbacks. You don't actually have a quarterback, even though both are incredibly talented. This is going to be a mess all season. I'm a hold, just because that's going to be a mess.
Carla, is this a Kmart layaway special?
Yeah, it is, because we need to see how they handle that, right? If Sark comes out strong after, the first couple weeks of camp and says, Quinn's our guy, and stands firm, and that is not an easy thing to ask him to do in this particular situation. But if Sark comes out and says, Quinn's our guy, and we're riding him as far as he'll take us in this season, Texas can contend. Because Quinn is a good quarterback. We saw what he could do last year in the Red River game. I mean, it was insane. And he's got the talent around him this year. I think if they would just be solid and make a decision and say, he's our guy, I think Texas could make a run. They're definitely the most talented team in the Big 12 right now. And so, just a trip or something like that would be the reason why they wouldn't potentially be in the Big 12 title game. Right. But that pressure of having that last name as a quote unquote backup, that's a lot to ask, not just of Sark, but of Quinn. What's his mindset when you know that one mistake and he's out? Right? That's going to be the mindset there.
That's a good point.
So
and he's bailed already.
Yeah, exactly.
On one program.
Right. And so if that happens and he gets and Ewers is sat down because of one bad half, right? Worst case scenario in my brain that's playing out is that Ewers goes out into Bryant Denny and just has an abysmal first half, which a lot of really good quarterbacks would do against that Alabama defense, right? But if he doesn't have a great first half against Alabama and Sark decides, what the heck, let's put Manning in. Does Ewers see the light of day again after that? Or does he mentally check out and say, I'm in the portal?
Is that, I mean, that becomes a Georgia with JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett came in.
Yeah.
JT Daniels was there's a little bit of a different situation there. JT Daniels was hurt, but everybody was like, JT Daniels is the better quarterback, but Stetson played his ass off and now has 2 rings. And
Right.
JT Daniels is at Rice. So there is a distinct situation there where Quinn either portals his way out, or Quinn plays so well that Arch is like, I need to see the field.
Yep.
I'm going somewhere else, and he portals out. Like this is the sort of challenge of like, we're going to bring in these top level talents year after year, but you need to set the expectation of, okay, he is going to sit for the first year. He is not playing week 1. He's playing week 1 next year when this guy's gone. This is honestly one of the weird good/bad things that Penn State did.
Yep.
This is the Sean Clifford, Drew Aller situation.
Yep, exactly.
Sean
100%.
Clifford was their dude. I mean, there's no question Sean Clifford was the guy. He had started like for 4 years. You're not pulling him for one mistake to throw the freshman in.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't play well in a half, you have somebody to go to. I think the challenge is making sure that everybody's on the same page of, this is our starter. We have an option if he's not playing well, versus this is our starter, and if he's not playing well, we're just losing this game. Right? I think that's the setup that Texas needs to have, and I don't think they've come out to say that, and I don't know if that's been said internally to the program either.
I'm going to sell. I think this situation is a bit much. I don't know that Sark has the cachet in Austin to manage what is about to happen. Hi, Charlie. The idea, the 2 quarterbacks means you don't have a quarterback. That's sort of what's going on here, but with the new dynamic of the portal and portaling in place. That's hi, Charlie. That's hi. I'm up here. Hello. If you guys are watching this or if you're listening rather than watching, this would be a good time to turn on the video, because Charlie's in my way. Come here, buddy. Ugh. There we go. I think that there's almost, unless he is super decisive, I don't want to say it's a no-win situation, but it could turn out to be.
Yeah.
So I am skeptical, and I'm going to sell Texas. Maybe I'll be wrong, but next up, your Washington Huskies. Carla, are you buying or selling?
So, okay, Washington was a bit of a mess last year. Let's be real. Because we never knew for sure which Michael Penix we were going to get. Right? That was the same thing that happened in the end of his tenure at Indiana, that, he was lights out crazy good, and then other times just really, really bad. And when he transferred out to Washington, we were asking the same questions: which Michael Penix are we going to get? And for the most part last year, he was pretty good. The big problem that the Huskies had, and that ended up biting them as the season went on, was just that they just didn't have a defense. They could put up big time yards on offense, but they couldn't stop anybody. And in a lot of games you would say, or in a lot of conferences you would say, okay, well, it's worked in the Big 12, right? Where you have like the Oklahoma States or the Oklahomas who can't play an iota worth of defense, but they can just outscore everybody. And that tends to work when you only have a couple of teams that can do that. Here's the problem with the Pac-12, and AJ mentioned this. We were talking about the Pac-12 media rights. So many quarterbacks. Right? I mean, like, you look at the Pac-12 and you've got Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, DJU. Remember him? He transferred out to Oregon State.
Yeah.
Right? Michael Penix, and then Cam Rising, the quarterback at Utah that got hurt in the Rose Bowl, which had he stayed healthy, that Rose Bowl would have gotten really interesting in the second half. And not as enjoyable for me as a Penn State fan. That's a lot of quarterbacks, and that's just 5. Right? And so that's why I think I'm going to sell Washington, is because unless that defense has been fixed, sure, they might contend in the Pac-12 where everybody can, it's just, let's points, all of the time. But you put any one of those teams into a playoff and they're going to get trounced in the first game because they can't stop them, right? So the only thing that I think that is beneficial, or actually that really hurts them, is they open at Sparty. So they play Michigan State to open their season, and then they have USC and Utah in back-to-back weeks in November. That's brutal. That's brutal.
Yeah.
So because of all of that, even though as much as I love Michael Penix as a quarterback and I love that whole quarterback situation, I think from a national perspective, you have to sell Washington.
Okay. AJ, what do you think?
I'm buying Washington. I think they have, outside of Caleb Williams at USC, the best quarterback in the Pac-12. They have all of the returning weapons from last year. Their line is mostly returned from last year, so they can put up a ton of points. To Carla's point, it comes down to defense. If they can stop at a higher rate than they were stopping before, they'll be fine. If they're not stopping at a rate like last year, it'll be a really, really long off season for them. They are currently ranked in SP Plus, 48th. They are the 8th ranked offense based on returning. This is post spring ball rankings from Bill Connolly at ESPN. They have the capability to be good, and I think it'll prove out over the course of the early part of the season, because I believe their upfront schedule, they play Boise State to start, and then they have Michigan. They go to Michigan State, so they have some challenges. But I don't think either one of those is going to put a huge test on their offense. And I don't think they get a huge test on their offense until after the bye week when they play Oregon. So they have the opportunity to get things in line with their defense and really be able to open things up offensively, and then go into the latter half of their schedule where there is a brutal run in there of at USC, home against Utah, at Oregon State that I would not want to be a part of. But these are the sorts I'm buying on Washington entirely because of that.
Okay. I'm leaning by. I'm a Michael Penix fan, particularly since he's no longer playing in the Big Ten. I'm happy to see him throw for as many damn yards as he wants to against Pac-12 opponents, and he's going to throw for a bunch of them. I'm basing my pick basically on entertainment value. I'm not sure. I mean, we'll have to see what happens with their defense. And you guys have both raised legitimate concerns about how that's going to go. They could finish 7-5, after getting roughed up by some teams that have quarterbacks that are nearly as good and offenses that are nearly as good. They could be playing USC for the title. Some of that stuff is unknown, but I'm going to buy. I am bullish on that offense. Thank you for stopping, Charlie. I appreciate that. And next up, South Carolina, the darling of the SEC upset last year. Are we buying or selling? AJ, what do you think?
I'm selling.
Okay.
They have Spencer Rattler coming back. They caught some teams on a downswing last year on the way out. I don't think they get the turnover luck that they got against Clemson last year to finish the season. They did play Notre Dame tough, but they did not win in their bowl game. They open the season with North Carolina in a neutral site game, and then they go to Athens. And then they're home for Mississippi State and then at Tennessee before the bye week. It's not going to be a good look for you, South Carolina. This is not it. They lost a lot of talent to the draft. They've not been able to bring in talent to replace that as quickly as I think they would have liked to. So I'm selling on South Carolina.
Carla, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm selling too. There's just too many questions. I mean, yes, Spencer's back, Spencer Rattler's back, and Juice Wells is coming back too, which was kind of a coup that he didn't go to the NFL draft because he very well could have. So good things for the Gamecocks offense, excuse me. so many questions everywhere else though, right? Like they need a running back. The offensive line has a whole bunch of questions. Their run defense was terrible last year. There's still big questions there. Now on the secondary, they'll be fine. But when you're playing on the road at Athens, like you kind of got to have both pieces of your defense, right? To really kind of to have a chance against the Dogs. The one thing that I will say though is that the Cox play the entire month of November at home.
Mhm.
And so what I see playing out here is it could potentially play out like it did last year, where they get beat up in the early part of their schedule, but they play, 4 straight games at home. They could be a hot team heading into a bowl game again, where that's the team you don't want to play. I could very well see that happening again this year.
Yeah.
But to be a legitimate contender in the SEC, no, unfortunately, this isn't the year, even though you have a really good quarterback coming back. So yeah, you got to sell.
Okay. I'm selling as well. Just because of the way that the season sets up, that's the first part of the year is brutal. They have that long stretch at home, and that gets you to 7-5. And you're bowl eligible, and that's great. But it's not a step up from what you did a year before, and that's the kind of progress that you'd want to see from Shane Beamer. I don't see it happening this time. Added this one to the list, and I'm not sure that any of us are going to be ready to buy, but maybe the better question about Colorado is, what does a decent season look like? But at any rate, Carla, the original question, buying or selling Coach Prime in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, this year you have to sell because, it's interesting. Colorado was abysmal last year, right? Won one game.
Yeah.
And so you go in and you bring in a big name to be a head coach, like Coach Prime. And the challenge there is that you want to try to build like the brand around the coach, right? Like that's going to give your program some identity, is to hire a big name coach like this. And the challenge here is that Prime came in and like threw everybody out, right? Including players, and is bringing in almost an entirely new roster of players. And I mean, even had a whole bunch of players transfer after the spring game, which you never see. Like that's not usually something that you see. Usually once your spring game, you might have one or two that decide they're going to move on, but like it was a large number of players opted to get into the portal after the spring game. And so as much as you want to create an identity around a coach, there's so much chaos around the program now that you're kind of in the same situation with where you started, with a program that doesn't have an identity yet. And so until this team gets out on the field and starts to gel as a team, you got to sell. And you look at their schedule and it doesn't shape up well. And so it's like, how does the school, how does the athletic department, how does Prime handle adversity? And what's the mentality there? And will Colorado give him enough time to be able to overhaul the program this way? It's just, there's so many questions this year. I think we're at least 2 or 3 years before if they give him the time, we're at least that far away to see if this grand experiment actually worked in Boulder. But for now, yeah, sell.
Okay. What the secondary question? What does a good season look like for Coach Prime this year?
3 or 4 wins.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, you look at their schedule. I don't see more than 3 or 4 wins.
Okay. AJ, buying or selling?
I'm selling.
Yeah.
I'm with Carla. I mean, a good season for them is anything more than 3 wins. They start the season at TCU, then they get Nebraska at home, Colorado State at home, and then at Oregon, home for USC, at Arizona State, home against Stanford, and then in the bye week. They are bringing in 50 transfers, 50 transfers. To be fair, some of them were from Jackson State, including Deion Sun Shador and the #1 recruit of the last recruiting cycle, Travis Hunter. So they are bringing in talent, but to Carla's point, it's not an identity. They have no identity. They have nothing. They are a complete makeup of a team. They have 19 signed, including Corbani McLean, who was a 5-star CB. They got a couple 4-stars, and then they have a bunch of guys coming in out of the transfer portal. Maybe these things work out.
Yeah.
But
like,
overall,
we have no idea.
This is completely and utterly unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
I'm selling because I don't think you can completely nuke a football team like this.
Yeah.
And he's able to take advantage of things that have changed in college football with regards to player movement that didn't ever happen before. So he's got 50 players who are transferring in who are all immediately eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, it was like you would get a couple guys transferring in and they might have to sit a year or whatever. No, he's bringing in guys who are 3-stars, 4-stars, 5-stars who are ready to go right now and have playing experience. So this is a huge shift. I'm selling because I don't think this is going to work. But if it does, I truly hope this does not set off a ripple effect through all of college football where everybody thinks, oh, just go hit the portal and just bring in guys.
Mm-hmm.
Just go. You can't. Portaling should be like, you ever fixed holes in a wall? It's like spackle. You don't cover the entire wall. You don't make a wall out of spackle. You fill holes with spackle.
Yes.
You can't replace the whole thing that way. Like Taylor Upshaw, Mike, you might remember him, the edge rusher from Michigan. He's in Colorado now.
Mm-hmm.
He transferred. You have who was the other one that I saw that I was like, oh, he went over there too. He's gotten guys out of Florida State, Alabama, Jaquez Robinson, who's a cornerback, Amarian Cooper, who's a cornerback. You have guys who are going there who are like, oh, these guys are like good.
Yeah.
Oh, but here's the difference. They know they're going to go see the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a grand experiment that I don't think every school is going to be able to do, but Deion's able to pull it off because he's Deion.
You said, let me ask a real quick question to follow up with AJ. You said that you're not sure this is going to work. Is that now? Is that long term? And is this something that's going to bear fruit for him at some point?
I think I'm saying I'm not sure if it's going to work long term. It might work in a 1 season scenario. It might work in a 2 season scenario. I do think that there's a number of players who, I mean, they've got 8 commits for the 2024 recruiting cycle. 4 of them are 4-stars.
Mm-hmm.
So he's also raising the recruiting floor. I think what he's trying to do is raise the floor of the program very, very quickly and use success with those players to generate more recruiting success going forward, because he has the ability to say, I'm Coach Prime. You want to play for me because my games are going to be on TV. If you go play for Washington State, you're playing on Pac-12 Washington. If you play on me, you're going to show up on ESPN. You're going to show up on Fox.
Okay. Carla, I'm sorry. What was your point?
Yeah, you raised some really good points there, AJ, and I want to it caused me to think back to my those of you who don't know my professional history. I used to work for Rivals, and I didn't work on the recruiting side, right? I worked on the high school team side, and you bring up a really good point there, because when we would sit down and look at the team national rankings and the teams that played well, it was the teams that weren't made up of the 4 and 5 stars that went out and won our, quote unquote, mythical national titles. It was the teams that had 1 or 2 really good players and a whole bunch of 2 and 3 stars underneath them, right? What we saw was that the teams that had a whole bunch of individual good players out there, they had decent seasons, but they never fully gelled as a team. Right. And I think there's some potential. Now, I realize this is apples and oranges because we're talking high school teams versus college teams. And I do realize there's a different conversation there, but I do think there's some merit to that. And if you get too many 4 and 5 stars and top tier players who say, I'm going to go play for Coach Prime because he's going to show me the playing field, and you get too many of them and too many egos in the locker room, you've got chaos. And I think we're on a fine line here with Colorado. With, yes, you want to bring in talent, but if you bring in a whole bunch of talent and they're all competing with each other, you're going to end up with the same mess that you started with. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this all kind of plays out.
I think I think the flip side to that is that in college, the teams that just have better talent win. This is the blue chip ratio from Bud Elliott of these are the 16 teams who have 50% or higher 4 and 5 star recruits on their team. I think that does play into raising the floor of the program. Their DC is Charles Kelly, who is the safeties coach at Alabama. Their offensive coordinator is Sean Lewis, who is the former head coach at Kent State, who had very good offenses. Their defenses are not something we're going to talk about right now, but they had very good offenses. There is a whole lot of stuff being put into the pot here that has the potential to turn into something very good. I think the problem is we have no idea because there's no prior art here. This is a completely new scenario that no one has ever tried before. And I think, to your point, that gelling is what is going to happen for them to be successful, because you can't just be talented and go win games. Texas A&M, but this is where, you know, rubber meets road. And if they can turn it into a gelled environment where they are able to play to the level of their talent, I think they can be successful. I just don't see it first season.
Okay. For the record, this is a great conversation there. And for the record, I'm selling. I think 4 wins would be miraculous. Maybe that might be a little strong, but it's interesting. Carla's point about the egos. I wonder, you know, what the value is of having to earn a position, and you know they're going to do that. But you know, a lot of these guys are coming in knowing that they're going to be the guy. Do they coast? Does Dion prevent that? I'm not sure how that's going to work. This is it's going to be a fascinating experiment, and it's very much is that. So we'll see how they go.
I'm looking at a depth chart for Colorado.
Okay.
And the depth chart generally organizes it. All the guys in orange are transfers or new freshman recruits, and guys in blue are not. And of the starters, of the ones I'm going to just say the starters for now, there are 5 total players who were on the roster last year who are returning players. The rest are transfers. If I look at the twos, the backups, 1, 2 of them are returning players. The rest are transfers. And then the 3s, 4s, and 5s mostly returning players. So he has literally turned over all but 1 player on the defense and all but 3 players on offense. It is a massive shift. Like, part of watching Colorado this year is just, did it work? Like, what is actually happening here? Is it turning into something? I think Colorado can be very good. They have this sort of bridge between being able to reach into California and being able to reach into Texas. I don't think that they have the necessary resources locally, and having a coach like Dion to be able to go recruit nationally potentially makes them better. I just want to see if this works. I'm fascinated to see what happens.
It'll be an interesting thing to watch for sure as we get into the season. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and a variety of other podcasting hosts. You can watch us on YouTube or the show's Facebook page. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business, and be sure to come back in the fall when you can see how wrong we are on a weekly basis. Guys, this is when we have one final thought. AJ, what is your final thought?
Realignment's not over.
Okay.
It's not going to be over for quite some time. The Pac-12 in and of itself, you have potentially San Diego State, maybe. You have the Big 12 leaking that they want to go grab the 4 corner schools, Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah. You have Oregon and Washington potentially going to the Big 10. You might dissolve the Pac-12 in the next 5 years. This is all things to keep an eye on, especially when the Pac-12 can't go get a TV deal done, and it's starting to become like you don't have the juice to go get one done sort of thing. So realignment's not done. We'll be back probably next summer to talk about it again. So
if not sooner, Carla, your final thought.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would love to continue talking about Penn State here, but actually, what I want to leave with my final thought is more talk about realignment and kind of delving a little bit into AJ's territory here a little bit. And in the last couple of days, we're recording this first week of July. There's been a lot of realignment that has happened, right? The 3 teams out of the AAC have gone to the Big 12. We've had new teams added to the CUSA, but the conference that really kind of caught my attention was the AAC. And I know that sounds really weird, right? Because the AAC was the conference that for a long time I looked at it and go, this is the conference that does not have an identity. And you can argue pretty strongly now that the loss of the 3 kind of big brand teams, right? Your Cincinnati's, your UCF's, and your Houston's to the Big 12 actually helps the conference a little bit form a better identity. Because if you look at the teams that are in the AAC now, I mean, who doesn't want to watch this league? And this is from the AAC website alphabetically: Charlotte, East Carolina, FAU, Memphis, Navy, North Texas, Rice, SMU, USF, Temple, Tulane, Tulsa, UAB, and our beloved UTSA, Meep. That's a conference I want to watch, right? That's a competitive conference for the most part from top to bottom. It's got a little bit better of an identity from a football aesthetic. They all fit. I love this move. And while I hate to say that because it comes at the detriment of my CUSA, losing some of those teams from the CUSA was not great. And I'm not overly thrilled with the additions that CUSA made in the offseason. AAC, well done. You've put together a really fun football conference, and now we'll just have to see if it actually plays out the way it looks on paper on the field this fall.
Okay. Did anyone think I would get through the whole show without mentioning Ohio State?
Nope.
No?
Not one iota.
Good. Okay. I wouldn't want to let anybody down. I am cautiously optimistic about Ohio State season as we look at things as they stand in July. To the degree that you can, I'm optimistic regardless of whether or not the quarterback is Kyle McCord or Devin Brown. And it's unless there's some problem with injuries, it's going to be McCord. The inexperience of that position may mean a little more emphasis on the running game, which would be fine with me. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, the human bowling ball, Dallin Hayden, a bunch of young guys behind them. They have legitimately one of the best running back rooms in the country. I'm not sure that there's a line for them to run behind yet. There's going to be some inexperience there. I'm hoping that is taken care of by November, because Ryan Day, you want no part of a 3-game losing streak to Michigan. I'm telling you right now, you just don't want to do it. So let's not. We'll come back and talk about that in November. We'll be back before then. When is week 0? Is week 0 August? Or are we coming back in August or September?
It is August.
Oh, man.
Week 0 is, hold on. Week 0 starts, load faster, Saturday, August 26th.
Oh, man. Okay.
When college football starts. And not only does it starts with Navy versus Notre Dame in Dublin, Ireland.
In Ireland. I'm not sure why that game is happening, but that'll be cool. I'm all in on the silliness, and that's only like 6 weeks away, guys.
Yeah.
Camps start in about a month or a little bit under, and then 6 weeks there's football. So, we managed to record this show this time, so we're getting better. We're improving. That's what the summer's for, and we will be back to talk to you about more college football in August. In the meantime, guys, enjoy the rest of your off season. Cheers, everyone, with our water and LaCroix and whatever else it is. We will talk to you again soon. See you.